split squat is a great exercise to practice hip positioning, specifically focusing on one hip or glute at a time. So when you are in a lunge position, your front leg or your working leg, you want to make sure that that working hip is positioned properly to use your glutes in the way they're supposed to be used or to their full potential. So if you think of the lunge position for a minute as just a single leg squat, right? You don't want this hip up or forward, because if you were to try to do a single leg squat in that position, it would totally throw off your center of gravity. Additionally, it's not using your glutes properly or fully when your hip is in the improper position. Rather, you want your working hip to be locked down and slightly back, okay? So down and back. So you can see the non-working hip is higher and more forward than the working hip. And if you try this yourself and do a thing called tap cueing, where you actually tap the muscle, you'll feel it engage much more than if this is your hip position. Not working glutes versus working glutes. So you want to keep that mindset whenever you're in a split stance or a lunge or whatever you're doing. So I'm going to work with this leg first, okay? So I get set up so that my back knee is just a few inches behind my front heel, okay? I keep everything pretty, centered as opposed to spread wide. Now this working hip, in order to get these glutes to turn on, I need to get in the right position first. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you're not arced, right? Because arcing is another way to ensure that your glutes are not going to be used fully. So hips neutral, like always, right? Pull this hip backward and slightly down in comparison to the non-working hip. So back and down. It'll look pretty equal. You're not going to have some crazy, tilt going on, but just that little act of pulling the hip down, you'll feel it engage the glutes. Use tap cueing to your advantage, right? So, neutral hips, pulled back and down. 3 points of contact should be even on the floor on your foot. So, if you think of your foot as 1, 2, 3, all of those points should be evenly pressed into the ground. So we're not going to be toesy, we're not going to be on our heels, we're not going to be in or out, flat foot on the ground. Okay. Here, flat foot, hips neutral, hip pulled back and down. I'm just going to stand up, bring that foot in a little bit if you need to. Okay. Make sure at the top that your hip is still pulled back into its socket the way that it was at the floor, okay? So the ultimate goal is to keep that position throughout the whole rise, okay? So adjust as needed, back down. So you can see my hip is staying pulled back and down, using my glutes the entire time, okay? You can also see my knee trail forward just a tad, okay? It would be unrealistic and actually not good form for you to be lunging back so that your knee is behind your toe. You want a healthy balance of back and forward. You don't want to be jutting so far forward, right, that we're putting unhealthy pressure on the knee tendons and ligaments. Rather, you want to just think stand straight up and sit straight down. That will allow a healthy degree of the knee trailing forward. So keep that weight through the center of the foot if that helps you to think of it that way, okay? A couple more reps.